Here we go. Over to you, Sashi.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining to yet another virtual event brought to you by MIT Club of Singapore. It's fifth such event we've been organizing, under the new exco term of this club, most of them being, online and virtual. And today we are presenting a panel discussion with three leaders in Singapore who are transforming the tech industry in Southeast Asia. They are Celine Kodanek. She's the Chief Data Innovation Officer of Bank of Singapore in Singapore. Zhang, Managing Director of Xendit, a fintech company providing payment solutions, and Devi, Sahny, founder and CEO of as now, a e-learning tech company. Moderating this discussion is a fellow, Exco member, Hui Zhu. She's alumni of MIT Sloan School of Management, currently working as a senior manager at Bain & Company. So quick intro that, and then over to you, Hui, to start and kick off this event and, a bit more discussion and introduction to our panelists.
Sure. Thanks, Sashi. Can everyone hear me well? Awesome. Well, given that we just celebrated the International Women's Day, we thought that it's really the perfect opportunity to present this panel of three different women leaders in tech. We've prepared some initial questions to ask the three panelists. And of course, towards the end, we'll also open the open to the floor and invite everyone to ask questions. Maybe to get started, Devi, Yang, and Celine, it would be great if you can give everyone a quick self-introduction and walking us through your journey so far in tech. Maybe Devi, you can go first.
Sorry. Sure, no problem. So hi guys, I am Devi. I head Sahny, which is an online coaching platform here in Singapore. We provide B2C support, both academic and beyond, and we also work with a few schools here in Singapore. So I actually have one of my students on this call, very excited, extremely bright kids, interested in MIT and learning more, I think, about women in tech, and really excited to be here. I'm not from MIT, I graduated from Georgetown University, spent a few years in finance, investment banking, and then decided that I wanted to follow the entrepreneurial route, and really happy that I did.
Cool. Celine, you want to go next?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Celine Kodanek. I'm the Chief Data and Innovation Officer of Bank of Singapore. So I'm running over the data and innovation strategy, looking at data platform, how do we upskill our people, move to Python, and the overall data governance and ethic in AI. And so I have a background coming from car manufacturing, starting with digital marketing, going into insurance as well. So I'm passionate about data, and I'm very glad that I'm here today.
Yang, over to you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Yang. I actually was a classmate of Emerson's at MIT. I think that for most of my life, I've been in tech in one capacity or another. But after school, I actually ended up pursuing kind of a very windy entrepreneurial path. So I've done some startups in ed tech, I've done some startups in environmental tech, and then finally now I've ended up at Xendit, building payments infrastructure across Southeast Asia. At Xendit, I actually lead our Philippines expansion as the managing director. I also look after our regionalization initiatives and look after our general kind of new products when it comes to localization for the Philippines market. So super excited to be here today and really happy to be sharing this panel with Celine and Devi.
Awesome, thank you. I guess all three of you had really different, but also very rich experience in tech. Just out of curiosity, what drew you into tech? What made you decide you wanted to kind of focus your career in tech? Yang, do you want to take this one first, so reversing the order?
Sure. I think my journey into tech was actually quite accidental. A lot of the folks who are on my team always laugh because they hear this a lot. But my mom basically kind of forced me to start coding when I was 5. I didn't know that, kids at the age of 5 didn't code. She was getting her long distance master's in computer science at the time. And she didn't really understand English all that well. So I basically just translated her books with her. So I think from that point onward, to me, I think tech was just another language that I learned. I had just learned English like the year before after I moved to the States as well. And so to me, it was actually just a form of self-expression. And so I think something that really changed for me when I got to MIT actually was that everyone else in Course 6 was really, really passionate about computer science and the actual technical side of coding, whereas what I really wanted to do was just build cool products. And so I think most of my career has actually just been finding my way back to that kind of excitement. And so a lot of what I loved about my job today actually is the ability to be kind of in tech, to be on the product side of things, building really cool products, but maybe not as deeply entrenched as I once was on the technical side. So I think for me, what really draws me in is the ability to just kind of create. And I think that's something that stayed consistent from, 5-year-old me until unnamed age me today.
Cool. Devi, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So for me as well, it wasn't something that I wish I could say I planned, to start an ed tech company. It was not at all the case. I actually moved to Singapore and wanted to start something in education. And in the initial days, it was basically tutoring door to door. And it was just me and two colleagues. And then we realized that with tech, we can really amplify our efforts. There's so many teachers in the US, in the UK, in India looking for extra opportunities. So how do we create a platform that enables students from all over the world to learn more effectively? And we started with this premise that we believe that students consume information online more effectively. That was kind of what we really believed in, and why a lot of people may ask. We thought that students or even adults, where do we spend our leisure when we have a chance? It's all tech, right? It's your phone, it's your computer, it's gaming, it's social media. So that perhaps sends us a message that that's how we want to consume information. So that's kind of how we began in the initial days, and it's such a beautiful amplifier, tech. But I would say that we are very much a ed first company, not tech first, in the sense that we spend a ton of time in our on our curriculum, having both the MOE and universities really tell us what can be improved, as well as students and parents. So the tech was the, in some ways, easy part to add on, but I still view us more as an ed company, I'd say.
Right. And Celine, do you also share the same element of serendipity into tech? Celine, are you there? Oh, maybe she's having some technical issues. I guess we can continue the session for now, and let me pin her to see what I can get her back online. I guess for Yang and Devi, given that tech is more of a means to the end, for Yang, maybe it's about building products, expressing yourself, and for Devi, maybe it's about education. Just out of curiosity again, you guys have both kind of worked in startup environment. Is that choice more of an intentional choice, or is it also kind of serendipitous?
I can take that one first. So for me, I only had one job. So I worked at Goldman for 3 years in investment banking, and I still remember when I did my first day of internship. You get that badge, right, and it says employee. And for some reason, I was 20 at the time, and I didn't like that word. I didn't like the word employee, and I knew that I wanted to do something completely different, but I just didn't know what. And even when I started, I didn't know what. So for me, there was always that edge that I definitely wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to decide what I do with my time, how I split my time. Someday, just I didn't know when. So yes, I would say corporate, or working with a large institution. And there are tons of learnings in large institutions, by the way, and I'm so glad I did only 3 years, and I could have learned much more that you can apply to a startup environment. But for me, I always sort of knew in my heart that I wanted to start something.
What about you, Yang Yan?
I actually had a very accidental journey into the startup world. So originally, my parents were encouraging me to go into finance. And I really had kind of committed myself to that path. And at the last minute, I told myself, And I'm so sorry for anyone who is in finance, who's attending here today, but I decided I can't do it. It just wasn't a good match with my personality. So at the very last minute, imagine telling a tiger dad that you cannot take a finance job and that you just need some time to find yourself. My dad basically said, well, then you're on your own until you do. So at that point, this is going to sound really similar to Devi's story. I actually joined a tutoring company because that was the first thing I could think of. I was really passionate about education, really passionate about mentorship, and honestly just wanted to save other kids with tiger parents like my own. So I think for me, that was really the first startup I ever built. I built like a boutique college admissions consulting business, but it was extremely accidental. I actually probably grew up my entire life thinking I was going to be in a corporate role, kind of climbing that corporate ladder for the rest of my life. But I think once you build a business, it's very, very hard to capture that high again in any other context. So I think in a lot of ways, I was really spoiled by being my own boss kind of from day one. And then after that, you know, I've worked in larger environments. So I was a chief marketing officer for an environmental tech company afterwards, a much larger company, but I definitely felt that sense of not having as much control over my own destiny. And so I think prior to joining Xendit, I also founded another startup in fintech. I think one of the things that makes me really love the journey I'm on today is that I think Xendit gives me ability to kind of run a startup within a startup. I think when you're doing market expansion, you always get that feeling of still kind of starting from ground zero. And so on that kind of, you know, famous metaphor of 0 to 1 and then 1 to 100, I think I'm solidly a 0 to 1 person. It's kind of what drew me to the startup world and keeps me there. And it's the 1 to 100 that I'm trying to learn to fall in love with as well.
That's super cool. I know a lot of people among the audience and certainly among EXCO members, a lot of us are thinking about doing our own things, having our own startups. So it's certainly very inspiring to hear kind of your journeys, your decisions, and kind of what drew you into the whole startup world. I guess if we switch gears a little bit, I know the whole topic around leadership is particularly relevant today, especially to a lot of women. There's a lot of people asking the question of how can I develop my authentic leadership style and my own leadership signature? So I'm just curious, how would you describe your own leadership style and how has that changed over the years?
I've only had about three years of leadership style, so it's for me it's really changed. It's changed from really micromanaging to wanting to control every single situation to hiring extremely smart people to do that and let me think. And I think that's extremely empowering to be able to empower others to make those decisions, right? Instead of you making that decisions. The second thing I would say is like I really do encourage my team, sometimes, you know, teachers, whether teachers, students, parents, to prove me wrong as much as I can in whatever decision making it may be, because I think that really helps that transparent relationship. So it's not, you know, it's not the boss and the employees, it's more like a team, and being able to be as objective as possible really furthers progress. At least that's what we've seen. So I would certainly say my leadership style has evolved, but I don't know if my team would think the same. I don't think they're on the call, so we shall see. But yeah, so I think that's one of the things for sure is trying to empower as many people as you can to make those decisions and run the show from start to finish.
Yeah, I think I agree with Devi in that, you know, empowering your team is super important because ultimately, if you don't, you become the bottleneck, right? Because then every decision has to be piped through you. I think in terms of how I've maybe evolved as a leader over the years, when I was younger, I did always feel like I had to be involved day to day on everything. And I think as you get older, what you realize is that, you know, the mark of a good leader is how quickly you can scale yourself out of that day to day and trust everyone who works on your team to kind of take those decisions upon themselves. I would say that my defining mark as a leader is really being a mad scientist. I think that very much in line with this like 0 to 1 mentality of mine. I always have new ideas. I always have some crazy idea I want to try executing. And I think that's one, I think the team that I try to build is one that's not scared to explore the idea, but also one that's not scared to turn the idea down if it's not feasible, especially at that point in time. So I think a lot of times the way that I think about leadership is the ability to kind of pass on those decision-making matrices to somebody else, but also respecting the feedback that they give when it comes to the next crazy idea, because you know that the pipeline of potential projects, potential ideas is endless. It's really about picking the right ones at the right time. So I think it's something that I kind of learned from a previous boss of mine who, I mean, the CEO of the environmental tech company hired me with zero experience in environmental tech. And I think one of the things that he'd always kind of told me was, I actually respect your opinion a little bit more because you come from outside the industry. You don't have these preconceptions. And so I think I try to pass on that same message internally. It's not that I always have the final say. I actually should never have the final say. It should always be a team consensus at the end of the day.
Got it. So it's a lot of kind of empowering your team, not just in kind of delivering the things, but also kind of really sharing their thoughts and inputs and their ideas to kind of shape the best way possible to solve problems or actually find the right direction for the overall company. That's super cool. So I guess if you could kind of share a little bit of your thoughts on how does being a woman have any bearing at all in your leadership style, or kind of the idea of being a leader. What would you say? What's your view there? Because there's a lot of debate out there today talking about, you know, whether it's easier or more difficult to be a leader as a woman, and kind of how women are kind of judged differently from men, etc. So what's your view there?
I don't want to be super politically correct and say that it doesn't matter. I think that the truth is, in every context, no matter what room you walk into, there will always be at least that moment of acknowledgement. This is a woman leading the operations. It's the woman leading on the product side, on the tech side. And especially when I was in, you know, more technical discussions, I do notice there's a moment of surprise if I'm the one answering the technical questions. And I think that to me, the way that I've always seen it, or try to spin it positively, is to take it as a compliment. I think that I know that the feminist movement in general is fighting for equality, right? But we cannot fight for blindness. And I think that ultimately, I think the way that I've always tried to get past these moments of awkwardness is to acknowledge that, yes, I am a woman. Yes, I will be the one being your tech PIC throughout this process, and that's fine. And I think past that, I then try to kind of turn this into a strength, right? The things that, you know, I think women are perceived as being better at work for us in terms of partnerships, in terms of trying to have empathy for the partner, in terms of building these long-term relationships. And I think that as long as both sides acknowledge that it is not, you know, a stereotype that we're feeding into, that it is not something that's going to hold us back in terms of advancement or in terms of really being able to take control of a situation, I think that it's actually perfectly fine to acknowledge that it is going to be a different dynamic, and then just to move past and kind of treat it as equal from that point onward.
Debbie, anything to add?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That was so beautifully put, Yang. I think embracing who you are and your gender is really, really important. I would say, especially in finance, women can sometimes find themselves in the minority, and that can always be a little bit difficult, especially if you're entering finance right out of college. It's not uncommon to be in a meeting room with 8 or 9 men and one intern and one analyst that's a woman. Again, using that as an advantage to prove the stereotypes wrong, right? Like to say something wild and say, okay, I actually disagree with that opinion if you do, right? I think that's a really a good point. I think in addition to being a woman, I think there's also there can be, and maybe this is a sensitive thing to bring up, but there can be also a little bit of age discrimination, right? Or, you know, you look young and how are you doing this, right? So that's something else to kind of, I think, potentially address. And at least we always encourage our students that age is just a number. You know, we have 12-year-olds that are making 18K a month on their clothing business, right? Like, it just doesn't really reflect on anything. And also the second part of that is like an assumption that I kind of disagree with, is like, why do 2 grade 9 kids that have different potential, different ambition have to graduate at the exact same time, right? So there's so many different assumptions there that I think are worth addressing too. So perhaps I'm bringing up more questions than I am answers here, but yeah, hopefully that answered a little bit, Hui.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for sharing your candid thoughts. And Celine just came back. Welcome back, Celine. So we were just talking about kind of leadership signature as well as your view on being a leader as a woman. Would be great to hear your thoughts on, how would you describe yourself as a leader, and what's your view on kind of being a leader as a woman?
I think that two things. First, what is my leadership style? I'm a very empowering person, right? Like I'm always telling myself, like, I'm not your babysitter. Don't ask me for approval of things that you can do yourself and other. So I like when people take risk. I allow them to take risk, and it's okay to fail, right? Because this is how you learn. So I see myself as a coordinator of great people more than a boss. And I think leadership is about being able to inspire people. It's about to show by example whatever needs to be done, so people can be inspired and they want to work for you, right? And they want to work with you. One of my first experience of leadership, I was sharing about this earlier today, is when I set up an NGO in China. It was called Shanghai Young Bakers, the training in bakery for Chinese orphans, right? I was 25 years old, and I had to lead 60 volunteers, and most of them were older than me and more skilled than me, and I was very afraid about that. And I think this was one of the greatest example of how you can start to lead people, because whenever you need to work with volunteers, you really need to inspire them. You're not paying them any salary or any money for the time that they're spending on your project, right? So this allow you to be good to create like story and vision and bring people along you with whatever you're doing. And as a woman, well, as a woman leader, I'm not only a leader, but I'm also a mother. I'm also a wife, right? So I have 3 small kids of 6, 4, and 2. And I'm hearing too often that people are trying to separate their work life from their family life. And I mean, I don't think that this is possible, right? We only have 24 hours in a day. And I think that the work-life balance is the one that you choose, right? So on my case, for example, I stopped working at 6. So this one is a unusual event for me, but in order to spend time with my kids, I don't take any calls between 6 and 9. And then after I start working again, that's my work-life balance. I don't care about working at midnight or 1 a.m. when my kids are alone, but I do care about not seeing them in the evening, right? So you need to prioritize as a woman. You need to, and you only have 24 hours in a day. So if I need to leave early the workplace, if I need to take a half day in order to cater for my kids, or the other way around, sometimes I need to work on weekend, and it's fine. It's for me to be able to prioritize according to the moments, and you can really schedule that in advance, and it doesn't fit into a 8 to 5 kind of agenda. So I believe that this is also what a woman leaders need to showcase, is how do you actually make that work-life balance work for you. And there is no right or wrong. Everybody has their timing and their priorities, and I respect all of that.
It's really, really beautiful to hear all 3 of you putting your own words to say that, what defines your leadership signature is empowering people, be it inspiring them, creating a safe environment to ensure that they perform at their full potential, or actively encouraging them to contribute their ideas and sometimes different ideas from what you have in mind. It's really, really beautiful to hear that. And I think I really like Celine's view on being a woman. You're also juggling between being a mother, being a wife, and also being a really good leader at work. So that poses unique challenges, which means you have to be more intentional in kind of prioritizing things and letting go of certain things and saying no. So I guess on the back of all these great discussions, if you could give yourself, your early 20s self, some advice besides what you have shared so far, any additional message you present? I guess there are quite a few young ladies joining our call today, and more will be hearing these recordings in the future. Any advice for them who are just kind of starting out their career and thinking actively on what kind of woman or woman leader they would like to become in the future?
I can jump in. I think that, my main advice would be bold, right? Try things where you think that you will not be able to do it, right? Because this is how you grow, when you get out of your comfort zone. And most of us women do not have this capacity of taking risk and trying to challenge ourselves by doing things that we've never done in the past, right? And I mean, I'm originally a sinologist, so I study Chinese culture and language, and I'm a chief data officer. I'm now working in tech implementation of AI, and I did that because every time I was curious and I dared to challenge the status quo and to do things that I've never done before, right? And so I think this is something that I've met a lot of, young women that are like, oh, I'm trying to think about my career and when I will be in 5 years and how can I reach out that. I mean, planning is great, but nothing ever happened the way you planned it, right? So I spent probably too long in China, but at the end of the day, like, just believe in yourself is the most important things. Be bold in the choice that you're making. Try out something, especially if you're young. You have nothing to lose in trying out something, right? And this is where you actually grow. And only by being self-aware and knowing yourself, you will be able to make the right choice. And you can plan out whatever you want. Things usually, again, don't happen the way you plan them, right? So don't spend too much time on planning and trying to. There is no magic recipe on how do you get from here to there. It depends of you. It depends of the moment. It depends of the opportunity. Leverage any opportunity that you can see, in your career to ask for a promotion, to be able to grow. I was talking with a tech company, and they did a study for the International Women's Day about why are women not as much promoted as men. And do you know what is the answer? Because they're not asking it. They're not asking for it, right? Your male colleague will be asking for the promotion every other week, right? So what are you waiting for as a woman to actually ask to be recognized for your work? So do not hesitate. Be more self-confident, be bold, and be curious. That's my advice.
Beautiful. Devi, Yang, anything to add on your end?
I agree with what Celine said for sure. I would say maybe sort of three things I would tell my younger self is, one, don't let fear drive your decisions, or like fear of the unknown. It's such a cliche thing, but I think that fear, it can really eat someone alive, right? So letting go of fear. That's one thing. The second thing is very much in line with what Celine said, is to be persistent. Just because you get a no doesn't mean you can't change it to a yes. And that might take a little bit of work, but it's possible to change it to a yes. And then the third thing I would say is, I wish I had done this more, is seek different types of mentors from different walks of life. Could be someone you work with, could be a friend, could be someone older or younger, it doesn't really matter, but seek that mentorship from different mentors. This was one piece of advice my first mentor gave me, is try to talk to as many people, and then very honestly ask that mentorship, because there's always that thing like, how do I ask someone to be my mentor, right? At least when I was young, I didn't know how to do that. And so that I would certainly tell myself is, you can get different qualities, you can learn different things from different mentors, and you can also contribute, but be proactive in that relationship. Don't just sit there, on your balcony waiting for your mentor to approach you. No, come in with a plan, come in with points to discuss, come in with points to ask. So yeah, those are the three things.
I think I definitely agree with everything that's been said so far, so I'll keep mine pretty brief. I think the only thing I would add to that is not to benchmark yourself against other people in your age group. I think that coming from someone who changed her major quite a few times, I think all of these things happen for a reason. I think that it's really about following what you're going to be passionate about, because I think the rest of your life is really long. And when you're in your early 20s, you're always thinking about what other people in their early 20s have already achieved and why you haven't achieved all of those things yet. And so I think that's something I wish I'd spent a little bit less time thinking about, because I remember the whole time I was like starting my first company, I was like, oh my gosh, all these people like doing these great, amazing things, getting promoted left and right. And I'm doing this like little startup. What am I doing with my life? And so I really feel like in order to kind of take those risks, you also have to let go of the expectations that you have for yourself and just kind of believe that if you find something you're passionate about, it's going to lead to like bigger and better things at the end of the road.
Cool. I guess a lot of these messages really resonate with me. I guess one of the things that maybe I would like to double click on a little bit more is the point on mentorship that Devi brought up. I guess I also realized all three of you have changed career quite a bit from, I guess in Celine's case, from nonprofit to car manufacturing to financial services. And Yang, you've changed many companies, I would say also industry verticals, even though it's all kind of tech companies. And for Devi's case, it's definitely from banking to kind of ed tech. So I'm also thinking perhaps mentors have played a pretty important role for all three of you in the past. And Devi brought up this point of, assembling a group of mentors from different walks of life and different industries, give you diverse perspective. So would love to hear from each of you on, how you have chosen your mentors and cultivated them in the past, and how did you keep the relationship going? Maybe Yang, do you want to start first?
Yeah, I actually was thinking about this a lot when you asked the question. I think one of my biggest regrets is not having cultivated more mentors, particularly more female mentors growing up. I think that throughout my childhood, my mentor had always been my grandmother. So I think it's super cliche, but she was this superwoman who had her first kid when she was 16 and then went back to school and became this like architect. And I think that for me, I always saw her as kind of redefining what it means to play the traditional roles of wife and mother and, working woman all at the same time. And so I think she was the person who humanized the superwoman myth for me. I think I saw her struggles. I saw this, I heard the stories from my mother about how difficult it was to grow up, with a working mother, going to school and then, having a full-time career. And so I think that it always kind of opened up that reality to me. But I think maybe because of the unique way that my first kind of role in ed tech kind of evolved, I guess I always felt like it was my responsibility to be a mentor to the kids who walk through those doors as well. So I think in a lot of ways, what I tried to do is make myself available as a mentor to the kids that, went through this college admissions program, because I knew that a lot of times it's so difficult to reach out to somebody else. And so I think, as Devi said earlier, it is quite difficult to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I want your mentorship. And I don't think I was able to find that kind of relationship or cultivate until I was much, much older in life. And then typically just with other mentors I'd find at work. So I think, the closest person I had after I sort of, stopped hero worshiping my grandmother was the boss that I talked about earlier. I think the fact that he believed in the fact that even with no experience in environmental science, he believed in sort of the raw talent that he thought I had and the value I could bring to the company. And I think the fact that he was willing to hire like a late 20s woman into a company that was kind of dominated by, middle-aged Korean men, it really spoke to me about somebody who wanted to see beyond the surface when it came to professional achievement. And I think that that's always kind of defined now how I try to think about my own, mentorships that I cultivate. Either those who come to me, I try to be blind to whether I think that, this person may benefit from, my mentorship. I try to think about the fact that if they approached me, they must think that, I'm valuable in some kind of way. And also the opposite. I think that now I'm a lot more willing to reach out to somebody in the industry that I really respect, ask them for advice, ask them for questions. But it is definitely something I wish I'd started cultivating much younger in my career.
Devi and Celine, what's your stories?
I totally agree with what Yang said. I think one thing I might add is, even if you don't know the person, but you have someone in mind that could be your mentor, it's not impossible to have that person become your mentor. You know, be persistent. I think I shared with you ladies last time like this story of a person that I wanted to be a mentor, and I reached out to him via LinkedIn, and he didn't reply for 1 year. Then after 1 year I reached out again, he still didn't reply. Then the third time I reached out, and then he replied, and today he's on our board. So it just takes a bit of time, but just be persistent, and use the mentor's time wisely. That's probably the second thing I would say. Don't just sit there, talk about, you know, the sky, talk about things concrete that are concrete. Everyone's super busy, and I think everyone seems to be overworked these days, right? So use that time wisely.
Yes, I think I would always say that finding a mentor is always a bit topic. I think that you need to find kind of affinity with the person that you're wishing to be mentored from. What I can share from my personal experience is that I had great mentor, and I still have them, right? I probably never told them officially, like, do you want to be my mentor? But those are the people that I always go to whenever I have to take a big decision. So I have one that is always helping me when it comes to, you know, professional decision, being able to negotiate my salary, my contract, you know, my promotion, and is pushing me forwards, telling the right thing, what is the right technique with HR, headhunter, you know, the new company that you're going to be joining and stuff. So one of them is very good at that, right? The other one is more of a really good people manager. So I reach out to him every time. He used to, you know, manage thousands of people in his past life, and I reach out to him whenever I have a employee question, you know, like, okay, how should I do with that? You know, like, I have this underperformer in my team. What are your advice? You know, so I have this kind of different type of mentor for different type of subject. You know, they are good in whatever they do. I don't always come with them with, you know, my whole list of issue, because they might not be good for one of the other or the other issues. So again, you know, as Devi is saying, like, use their time wisely, especially if they are mentored, means that they are usually very busy people. And so reach out to them with very precise question. And I think, I mean, on the other side, I've been mentoring some women, you know, that came to me and say, okay, I would like to make a change of career. I would like to work in data. I used to be in like project management, you know, what can I do? You know, can you, so, and she came, and I like it very much, because like, she has a very structured plan about, okay, this is what I'm expecting from this mentorship. Like, you know, can you advise me? Can you, you know, help me to find out what are my strengths in finding a data role? You know, there are plenty of data roles. You can be data scientist, but you can be project manager. You can be data analyst. There are many things that you can do, data governance. So what are my strengths, and how do I fit in all those type of role? And then I was prepping her for some interviews. You know, I tried to tell her, okay, from your past experience, you should highlight this, because this is something that will be very useful for this position. So she came to me with a very discipline. I was seeing her once a month for lunch, or you know, for dinner, and we're going over for 2 hours over, you know, what have been the progress. She had some tasks to do. She came back to me, and then, you know, and so I think this mentorship was quite beneficial. On the other way around, you know, I've been assigned as a mentor or some younger mentee. It was like, especially corporate program where you actually match, you know, with some people. And then, you know, we're having like Skype conversation, and nothing is prepared. And we just, you know, we just need to catch up, because that's part of what the mentorship program is about, but it's not very well structured. So at the end of the day, it doesn't bring anything to anyone, right? I'm losing my time in the mentee as well, because like there is no affinity. It was just a simple match between two people. So for me, a mentorship is like any other type of relationship, you know, and we can compare that to dating. you need actually to find the right person, you know, where you think that you'll be able to be honest, you know, and these people will help make you grow. And it's okay, sometimes you think that the mentor was the one that you wanted, and you realize that it's not, you know, their style is not what you're looking for, their advice is not something that you're agreeable with, their value maybe you realize is not the same as yours. Then it's fine to just get it short, you know, don't drag mentorship if it's not bringing any value to you. That's my other advice. Like any other relationship, just, you know, quickly try to identify if this is bringing you something or not. Otherwise, just, you know, break up with your mentor. That's my advice.
I guess on this particular topic of mentorship, I guess one of the questions I personally have a lot, and I realize that always hands at the back of my head is, why would somebody spend time with me, when there's nothing much I can offer in return as a mentee? So Yang Yan and Celine, and I'm sure Devi, you do too, are now kind of mentoring others. How would you encourage the audience, all of us, to think about this in terms of, how should I, or how should we overcome this question on why would somebody offer time as a mentor to help me?
Well, any type of relationship, I think if you're asking yourself that thing, is that you don't realize that whenever you're mentoring someone, you're getting as much as the mentee gets, right? Because first of all, it also had the mentor to develop some skills, of leadership, again, people management. It's also very powerful to just think that you have given back, right? Especially I've been mentored, so some people have spent time mentoring me, so it's kind of a way to give back what I already received. And this is creating this cycle where I'm mentoring young women that I hope will become leaders tomorrow and will mentor other people, on their in their return. And I'm getting a lot from my mentoring activity, to be honest. I'm getting it's honest, it's efficient. And when my mentee just got a job in data, which was actually looking for the past like 8 months, right? Like, I'm very proud to have helped her achieve her dream, right? And it's something that is actually very valuable for the mentor side. So don't forget that the mentor is getting as much as the mentee is getting, as long as this relationship is, again, a true and beneficial relationship for both parties. And don't undervalue yourself. It's don't think that you're taking time from the mentor. Otherwise, I mean, the mentor will be honest and just tell you, okay, let's just stop that. It's not bringing anything to anyone, right? So same as any type of relationship, it's always a both way thing, right?
I think Celine is really correct in that all mentor-mentee relationships are just relationships, right? So there's always a give and a take. I think there are a couple of things in the relationships I have with those I mentor that are especially meaningful. I think the first is that being a mentor makes you really introspective. There's nothing like someone asking you about how to make a decision that seems so natural to yourself, that makes you really break down that decision-making process, and maybe even question how you've been making these decisions, or pushing for these promotions or doing all these things in the past as well. I think the other thing is, genuinely, I feel like watching someone that I mentor able to then take that leap and take an independent step on their own is probably one of the most rewarding things you can do, because I think it amplifies. I think it's really that sense that you are amplifying the contribution that you are making to the rest of society, right? Like, this sounds really like, pretentious, I think, but at the same time, you are still just one person. You are limited to the amount of things, the amount of tasks, the amount of, new projects and opportunities you can tackle in a single day. But when you teach those skills to somebody else, you know that that person can go out and change their sphere and have this ripple effect where eventually you hope that person will still teach those same skills to somebody else. And I think, to me, one of the things I love the most to bring out in somebody else is that thrill of discovery and creation, and really loving the idea of starting a new project. And so when I see somebody kind of embrace that passion for wanting to do something new, and then taking that initiative and, starting an experiment on their own, or starting a project even internally in their own, I think that's really what means the most to me, and then makes it worthwhile to spend those long hours kind of coaching them to that point.
I couldn't agree more. I think when you take a step back and you think, like, why are people teachers, right? It's because it's rewarding. So why do people want to mentor? Because it's when you want to see your mentee do well. That feeling of seeing your mentee do well, and you having 1% or 10% of that part in that journey, it's really, really special. So I think that's something that that mentees should definitely think about. And the second thing is, I totally agree with you, Celine, on the some mentees may undervalue themselves, right, and undervalue their time. So I think that's something else that needs to be addressed.
That's really touching. I guess just one last question before we open the floor up for more questions. I guess putting on now the mentor hat, what sort of advice would you give to people, especially women who are interested in getting into tech? For example, where to find resources, how to find the right role, what type of company to start with, and so on and so forth.
I think everyone has their own journey. Again, there's no like, right track or wrong track. Where do you want to find resources to upskill yourself? You got thousands and thousands online, offline. Something called Google is great to start with Stack Overflow, and then you got a lot of online courses. On the data side, you get Data Camp, that is amazing. But Coursera and everything that you can find online is amazing these days. You got also, if you want to change career, you have a lot of grants that are allocated by Future Skills University, so it's NUS, NTU, SMU, all have like reskilling program for people that don't come from a tech background and want to take like a course and a master degree in technology, analytics, and other. General Assembly is doing also a 12 weeks course, in order to upskill yourself in Python and visualization. There's thousands of things. You just need to be curious and look out there. What is your right fit? Girls Who Code, like there are so many things. It's just a question of, what is your interest and your appetite to do that? On what is the role that you can find? Again, it's yuan fan, as we say in Chinese. It's going to be the role that you will find and that will suit you, and the interview that will go well. And if you don't get the role, this is why, like, don't be too much on the job description and on the role and how it is described. You make the job that you want at the end of the day. It's a question of, again, be bold, right? If you like something, if you want to develop a technical skills and you like it, then take the job that you can find that is the most related to that, and then make it. I have guys that are willing to deploy machine learning model. It was not in that job description originally, but they push for it, and now they will be able to do it, right? So as long as you're perseverant and then you have faith, then it's good. And there's no good company, bad company. Any experience is a good experience. It's really more of a personal question at the end of the day. Which type of industry do you want to work on? Financial services, FMCG, mobility, whatever, government agency. It's every opportunity is a good opportunity to grow and learn. And the company that will give you the chance, especially if you don't have a background in technology and then you want to change career, is by definition a good company, wherever they're coming from, because it means that they're able to take the risk of hiring people that don't have much experience in doing something in the past. So I would go for the one that is willing to hire me.
Yang and Devi?
I would just say one thing in terms of resources is this is something I wish I had learned earlier, is spend time developing networking strategies and good, genuine, authentic networking strategies. If you're moving roles, or if you want to gain mentorship, I think that's something really worthwhile. And of course, Zoom is great, but maybe I'm old-fashioned, but an in-person meeting creates a huge bond, a huge trust, much more so than Zoom. So where you can, try to meet in person. This is a piece of advice someone gave me a long time ago, and for a lot of things it works.
Definitely will second that the in-person meeting really helps, especially when you're trying to break into a new industry, because I think a lot of times when experience can't bridge the gap, I think that it's definitely more important to emphasize your passion and your desire to get into that industry. I think on my side, tech to me is really hands-on. I think that fundamentally being in the tech industry in whatever capacity means that you have to understand the underlying technology itself, right? Whether you are a product manager and you need to understand how the actual tech stack works with each other, or how the platform that you're trying to, contribute to actually runs. I think that it's really about getting that background knowledge. And I think now there are so many resources out there for you to get some actual maker experience. So I think for those who want to get into sort of software development focused industries, take a coding class. Even if it's just super, super simple, like Python 101, take that coding class and see if that's something that you're really interested in. I think that taking that first step and kind of getting over that kind of hump of being scared of like, hey, what am I getting myself into? I know nothing about this particular field, is really life-changing. I think that if you can get past that first one, it's a lot easier to then open the conversations with everyone else. I think it's also important particularly when it's women trying to get into tech, to kind of identify someone else, maybe an older woman who is in a position that you want to be in, even if it's someone you want to kind of see yourself in the same position of in 5 years or in 10 years. It's always great to kind of find that North Star for yourself. And then maybe reach out to that actual person as, a mentor, or just kind of figure out how she got there. I think a lot of people take very unconventional paths to really successful careers. And I think that finding out about those unconventional paths will always sort of inspire that younger generation to find their own.
Wow, such great advice. And thanks again for sharing your experience, your journeys, and your take on leadership and mentorship. Maybe Sahny, right now, I hand over to you to moderate the Q&A session.
Okay, I think we'll just got 10 minutes more, or a little less than 10 minutes. We can take in a couple of questions. I saw that somebody had actually raised their hands, or you feel free to type in questions. I saw a hand raised by Duru. So can you please, you're free, you can ask your question or join in the discussion.
Hi. So I just had a question for you. So have you ever felt that you missed out on an opportunity because of your gender?
I can answer that. I'm a quota girl, right? I wouldn't be where I am today if I think my company didn't have quota. On the contrary, actually, like the world is moving and towards, and I think it's a good thing. And I don't know if I should be proud of that or not, but I was working in car manufacturing R&D center. We were only 6% of women. And the bosses had KPI to always get a woman in their team. And when the head of R&D had 13 direct report, only males got this KPI. Then we were not many women actually at that time. So I believe this is what helped me in my career. On the contrary, so yeah, no, I would say on my side is the contrary. It always helped.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the audience?
I have one, and it's a little bit controversial, but let me frame my question. I have an awesome daughter, 18 years old. Hi. And I want to ask the panel, a lot of your advice and insights are applicable for both male and female, young and old, many of the challenges that we face, right? I'm still suffering from imposter syndrome, so that you know. And coming to women, I wonder, the whole movement about women in tech, honoring women, focusing on how we can help women. Do you think we are putting the ladies in a position of compartmentalizing where they are and making them conscious that, yeah, I'm a woman, and so therefore I'm disadvantaged, or I got to work harder, or I got to be more aggressive? Sometimes I feel we are overdoing it a little bit by putting too much focus on this. In fact, I cringe when some of my friends and colleagues, they post stuff on LinkedIn. My company, certainly, right? We are big in diversity and inclusion, right? And it almost seems like all the leaders, including myself, have to have, check boxes of having ladies and other minorities in our business. So keen to hear your thoughts, right, about this rather uncomfortable question. I think this would be really interesting to many of us here, including my daughter who is eavesdropping right now.
I can go because I got the exact same conversation 2 days ago, right, on that very same topic, and it's the same for the Black community in the US, and so I had my friend telling me exactly the same thing, yeah, women in tech, you're marginalizing the domain at the end of the day. I think it's a bit different, especially for the women in tech movement. Why it is? Because the women in tech movement is here in order to be able to showcase talented women to younger girls, because one of the problem of women in tech is that we don't get enough girls that are taking STEM education to start with. So we don't get enough resume to hire from, like there is a gender disparity in the resume that we actually get when it comes to tech position, because also, sometime we were talking about like when you're a developer, they will ask you to be able to meet shown timelines, or, a lot of workload, very delivery focus, and those are kind of words that kind of afraid women, because especially when they want to have kids and they're like, no, I need also to put my family first, and that's things that happen. So I think the women in tech movement is really about trying to showcase to the younger girl that it is actually feasible to work in tech for women and create some kind of women that they can look toward to. One of the reasons why I think it is important, I will give you a very good example. I'm working on all the ethic and AI topic, right? And bias of algorithm. And there was an example given by Lazada, head of data science, Eugene, a few years ago. He had one of his data scientists that just became a father, right? And so he purchased on Lazada a powder milk and diapers, and automatically he got sent makeup, advertisement, or dresses advertisement, women related, right? In that case, can you say that the algorithm is biased? No, it's not. The algorithm learned from a data set. The data set is biased because 90% of the people that are buying diapers and powders milk on Lazada are women. And so this is why the algorithm will just automatically detect that, this kind of purchasing behavior and push women-related advertisement. So the long story short, in conclusion, if you want technology and especially AI tomorrow to be less biased, we need to make the community, the data set, which means that the society at the end of the day less biased. So this is why for me, gender equality, especially in the tech field, is actually quite important, because this is what's going to help us in the future to ensure that our technology are not also biased by being only male or only white coded or whatever. We need to have enough diversity represented, so the tech are also diversified and less biased.
That's great. Yang, maybe your maybe some insight also on this. Probably Chingsu, maybe you can also chime in, or
definitely is a controversial question. I think in terms of the women in tech movement, I think that largely the initiatives fall into two categories, right? The first is sort of this blind inclusion of women. The second is awareness, as Celine said, of women who've accomplished great things in tech in order to empower the second generation. I think that the first kind of initiative, which is that, just more women should get involved in tech, I think is definitely something that the messaging could be improved upon, right? I think that sometimes there are a lot of initiatives that focus on the inaccessibility of tech to women rather than the how to get into tech, right? I think most of these movements, in order to be effective, have to focus more on the solution than the problem. And so I think the things that are the most positive about this movement, however, are initiatives like Girls Will Code. What I love the most about that program is that the use of the word will. Inevitably, as education and efforts to educate become way more and more accessible to this new generation, women will have more opportunities to learn more about tech. women will have the opportunity to get involved in tech. And I think as a result of that, the focus needs to shift to that second part of the conversation. In what element of tech does each young woman want to get involved? How do you then advance in these particular areas? Is it data science? Then how, what areas are available there? It's very much about the educational aspect in terms of empowering young women, rather than focusing on continuing to talk about the problem, which is women feeling disenfranchised in the tech industry. And I think I do see this shift even from my youth until today. I think when I was younger, it was a lot more unusual. I mean, the distribution of women to men in my coding classes, for example, is a lot more warped when I was going to school than I see today. And I think it very, very much has to go back to those education initiatives and making that access to technical education available to everybody.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.